The first time I heard my parents laugh about using me for money, I was sitting in my office in Chattanooga, investigating a fake invoice scheme for strangers. I was 35, a senior fraud analyst. The woman companies hired when money disappeared and everyone started lying. Then my sister Kelsey sent me a recording. In it, my father said I would keep sending checks because I was too responsible. My mother laughed and said what they really needed was my bank account. Elsie asked what story they should use next month. Another medical emergency, maybe. They all laughed. I looked at the spreadsheet I had kept for 13 years, every wire, every emergency, every payment I had called family support. The total was $326,780. And before that week was over, I would trace part of it to a secret lake cabin, an escrow deposit, and one document my lawyer would later call Exhibit A Chapter 1. The recurring she thought would break me the first time I heard my parents laugh about using me for money. I was sitting in a glass-walled office in Chattanooga, tracing a fake invoice trail for a construction company that paid vendors who did not exist. Two monitors glowed in front of me. On the left was a spreadsheet full of repeated payments, suspicious vendor names, and dates that lined up too neatly to be accidental. On the right was a bank activity report I had been marking for hours. I was 35 years old, a senior fraud analyst at Hensley and Rowe Forensic Advisory, and my job was to find the story people built around stolen money. That was the part I was good at. Then my phone buzzed beside my keyboard. It was my younger sister, Willa Sutter. Guess what Mom and Dad said when you weren't there? Under the message was an audio file. I did not open it right away. I just stared at her name until the numbers on my screen blurred. Kelsey rarely texted me unless she wanted something, wanted to mock something, or wanted to drag me into a family drama she had already rehearsed in her head. She was 31, 4 years younger than me, and somehow still treated like the baby of the family, even when she was the one holding the match. I put on my headphones and clicked play. My father's voice came first. Warren Sutter sounded relaxed, almost cheerful, the way he did when he was holding court after church or telling neighbors he had fixed someone's breaker box for half what a company would charge. As long as she keeps sending the money, we're fine. Then my mother laughed. Margot Sutter had a soft voice in public. At church, people called her gentle. In grocery store aisles, women stopped to ask about her casserole recipes, her prayer group, her garden. In that recording, her voice was still soft, but there was nothing gentle in it. She really thinks we need her. What we need is her bank account. Fingers went cold on the mouse. Dad laughed again. She won't ask too much. Willa's too responsible. In the background, Kelsey's voice slid in, bright and amused. So what are you telling her next month? Another medical thing? All three of them laughed. I stopped the file. For a few seconds, the office around me disappeared. I could still see the lights reflected in the glass wall. I could still hear the hum of the printer down the hall. But everything inside me went quiet in a way that did not feel like peace. It felt like a door closing. I did not cry. I did not throw my headphones. I did not call Kelsey and give her the reaction she wanted. I looked at my second monitor. Behind the construction fraud file, there was another spreadsheet, one I had kept for years but never truly examined. Its name was Family Support. Every wire transfer, every emergency payment, every late-night bank app transaction from 2012 to 2025 was sitting there in clean rows. At the bottom was the total $326,780. I understood then why Kelsey had sent the recording. Not because she felt sorry for me, not because some hidden conscience had finally woken up in her. Kelsey wanted me to explode. She wanted a long, wounded message she could screenshot and drop into the family group chat. She wanted proof that I was unstable, greedy, bitter, and dramatic. She wanted to say I always made money weird, so I did not give her that. I typed 3 words, so do I. Then I saved the audio file in a new folder, Sutter. I made a copy of the old spreadsheet and renamed it, Sutter Fraud Review. It's your missus. Before my family turned me into a bank account, they turned me into the responsible one. I was born in 1990 and raised in a small house on Laurel Bend Road in Cleveland, Tennessee. My father was an electrician, the kind of man people trusted because he spoke slowly, shook hands firmly, and showed up to church in a pressed shirt. My mother stayed home and made that house look warmer from the outside than it ever felt from the inside. She belonged to the women's group at church, brought casseroles when someone was grieving, and knew how to make her voice tremble just enough that people leaned closer. Kelsey was the baby. That was not just her birth order, it was her identity. She was sensitive, she was delicate, she needed patience, she needed understanding. I was stronger. That word followed me through childhood like a hand on the back of my neck. I washed dishes while Kelsey watched TV. I folded laundry while Kelsey complained she was tired. I cooked dinner when Mom had headaches. I watched Kelsey when Dad worked late. If Kelsey cried, everyone softened. If I cried, someone reminded me I was old enough to know better. I remember one Sunday dinner when I was 11. The table was still covered with plates, green beans, mashed potatoes, and the heavy silence that came after Dad decided everyone should be grateful for what they had. Kelsey slipped out of her chair and ran to the living room to watch cartoons. I stood at the sink, scraping plates into the trash. Mom came up behind me and touched my shoulder. Kelsey has a soft heart. You're stronger, Willa. Dad walked past with his coffee cup and added, that's why we can count on you. At 11, that felt like love. I did not understand yet that being counted on could become a cage. Did not understand that responsible was not always a compliment. In our house, responsible meant I was the one who could wait, the one who could go without, the one who could understand why Kelsey needed more. The one who could swallow disappointment quietly because making a scene would make Dad feel like a bad man. That was one of Mom's favorite lines. Don't make your father feel like a bad man. So I learned to shrink before anyone asked me to. I learned to read moods before I read books. I learned that being useful was safer than being needy. I was not the daughter they protected. I was the daughter they used. The money started small enough to seem harmless. In 2010, I was working as a cashier at Food City while taking classes and trying to build a life outside that house. Dad called one evening and said the electric bill was late. It was $180. He sounded embarrassed. He showed me the bill. It was real. I paid it. The next year, he needed $240 for a truck repair. There was a receipt then too. A real garage, a real part, a real problem. I paid that as well. Those first emergencies mattered. They taught me that helping was reasonable. They taught me that my parents asked only when they had no choice. They taught me that when Dad sounded ashamed and Mom sounded tired, the right answer was yes. By 2012, when I was 22 and earning steadier money, the calls came more often. Just until I get back on my feet, Dad would say. Mom always added the part that made refusing feel cruel. We hate asking, baby. You know that. I did know that. Or I thought I did. The first time I asked for paperwork, I was 24. It was 2014, and Dad needed $700 for what he called a medical bill. I was already learning accounting by then, already understanding that records protected everyone. I asked softly because even then I knew my tone mattered more in my family than the truth did. Can you send me the invoice? I can pay it directly. Silence on the phone changed shape. Then Dad said, so now I have to prove myself to my own daughter. I remember sitting on the edge of my bed, one hand over my eyes, already regretting the question before I even understood why. That night, Mom called me. Her voice sounded like it had been soaked in tears. Your father cried after that call. He said you made him feel like a thief. A few minutes later, Kelsey texted me. You always make money so weird. I apologized. I told Dad I had not meant it that way. I transferred the $700. After that, I learned another family rule. If I asked for proof, I was not being careful. I was being cruel. Years later, in my office in Chattanooga, with my parents' laughter still sitting in my headphones, I opened the spreadsheet again. The verified column had been blank. For so long it looked like a confession. I had spent my adult life auditing strangers, tracing false invoices, finding missing money, and explaining to clients that guilt was not documentation. But I had never audited the people who raised me to believe suspicion was betrayal. This time, I did not close the laptop. I placed my fingers on the keyboard, clicked into the first row, and began turning family support into an investigation. Chapter 2. Every time I asked for paper, they gave me guilt. The strange thing was, I knew exactly how people hid money. I had built a career out of finding the places where numbers stopped behaving like numbers and started behaving like lies. I chose accounting because numbers did not gaslight. A payment either landed where someone said it landed, or it did not. An invoice either matched the work performed, or it did not. A reimbursement either had documentation, or it was just a story with a dollar sign attached. Hensley and Rowe Forensic Advisory, stories with dollar signs were my specialty. Victor Hensley, one of the senior partners, was the kind of man who could read a balance sheet the way some people read weather. He was fair, exacting, and allergic to excuses. The audit manager, Renata Moss, was the first person there who seemed to understand how my mind worked. You don't just find missing money, she told me once, leaning over a conference table covered in bank records. You find the story people built to hide it. I was good at fake invoices, shell vendors, misclassified expenses, payroll fraud, reimbursement abuse, vendor kickbacks disguised as consulting fees. I knew how to follow a payment through 4 accounts and still hear the lie under it. The case on my desk that week involved Daryl McKean, the CFO of a local construction company. Daryl had not stolen one dramatic pile of money. Men like him rarely did. He had built his theft in polite little pieces. A landscaping invoice here, a materials reimbursement there, vendor with a name generic enough to sound real and an address that led to a mailbox store. Individually, the payments looked boring. Together, they had a rhythm, same week of the month, same rounded amounts, slightly different memo lines. One vendor address used by 3 companies that did not seem to own a single truck, tool, or employee. I found the pattern before lunch. Victor stood behind my chair, reading the highlighted rows on my monitor, and gave a small approving nod. You can trace money through concrete if you have dates. I smiled because it was the kind of compliment Victor gave. Dry, practical, and impossible to fake. Then my phone buzzed, Mom. I let it ring once. Twice. Then I answered because that was what I did. Hi, Mom. Margot's voice was soft and tired. Baby, I hate to bother you at work. My stomach tightened before she said another word. People think manipulation always sounds sharp. In my family, it sounded wounded. What happened? It's your father. He didn't want me to call, but the house payment situation is just getting heavy again. I looked at the fake vendor file on my screen. Repeated emergencies are rarely emergencies, I would have written in a report. Out loud, I said, how much? After the call, I opened my bank app and sent the money before my soup in the break room had cooled. Renata walked in while I was still staring at the confirmation screen. Family again? I locked the phone and tried to smile. Just helping. She did not push. Renata had a way of seeing too much and saying only enough. You know, she said, opening the fridge. In our line of work, repeated emergencies are rarely emergencies. I laughed lightly like she had made a joke. Good thing my family isn't a client. But something in my chest pulled tight, because the truth was not that I never noticed. The truth was that I noticed and then looked away. I could examine a stranger's bank records with surgical focus, but I could not let myself look at my parents the same way. Strangers had not raised me to believe suspicion was betrayal. By 2016, the money had become part of my calendar. Kelsey started at Cleveland State Community College that year, and Dad called to say books and fees were more expensive than they expected. He asked for $400 a month, just until she got settled. I wanted Kelsey to get settled. I wanted her to finish something. I wanted to believe that if I helped enough, maybe my family would become less fragile. So I paid. In 2017, Kelsey talked less and less about classes. She worked more hours at a boutique downtown, posted dressing room selfies, and somehow always had time for brunch but never for exams. When I asked Mom whether Kelsey was still taking a full load, Mom's voice tightened. She's just taking lighter classes. Don't make her feel judged, Willa. So I stopped asking. In 2018, Dad had a back procedure. That part was real. He even sent me a few explanation of benefits pages because he said the insurance language confused him. I saved them in a folder and skimmed them between 60-hour weeks, but I did not study them. Not the way I would have studied them for a client. Dad said the out-of-pocket cost was $31,500. I believed him because the alternative felt like accusing my father of turning pain into a fundraiser. By 2020, he was asking for $1,950 a month to keep the house on Laurel Bend Road from falling behind. He said Volunteer State Credit Union was breathing down his neck. One afternoon, when I was older, steadier, and supposedly smarter, I tried again. Dad, if it helps, I can pay Volunteer State Credit Union directly. The silence that followed felt familiar. It was the same silence from 2014, older now, but just as effective. You think I can't handle my own house? No, that's not what I meant. It sounds like what you meant. Mom called an hour later. We are not strangers, Willa. Families don't send invoices to each other. Then Kelsey posted in the family group chat. Some people get one little salary and suddenly need paperwork from their parents. I stared at that message longer than I should have. Then I sent the money. That was the thing I hated most later. Not that they lied. Liars lie. Thieves steal. But I had participated in my own silencing because I was terrified of becoming the daughter who made her parents feel ashamed. The signs kept arriving anyway. One Sunday dinner, I drove back to Laurel Bend Road and found the kitchen transformed. Quartz countertops, new appliances, white subway tile, soft close cabinets that made the old house look like a renovation show had passed through it. I stood in the doorway with a bag of rolls in my hand and said, I thought the mortgage was behind. Dad did not even blink. Don't make it transactional. Mom immediately turned toward Kelsey. Show your sister the jacket you found. And just like that, the conversation moved around me. That Christmas, I brought gift cards, paid a truck repair bill, showed up with a casserole because Mom said she was too tired to cook much. I received a generic candle in a frosted jar that still had the clearance sticker, half scraped from the bottom. Kelsey got a new coat, a spa card, AirPods, and a glossy gift bag Mom filmed for Facebook. I sat on the couch holding that candle and did a different kind of math. Not the math of money. The math of place. Mine was very clear. I was the daughter they called when something was due. I was not the daughter they celebrated when something was beautiful. Kelsey's wedding in 2021 proved that in a way I should have understood sooner. She married Noah Whitcomb at a barn venue near Dayton, Tennessee. The kind with string lights, wildflowers in mason jars, a rustic dance floor, and a welcome sign with their names painted in looping white script. Later, I would learn the wedding cost about $52,000. At the time, all I knew was that I was not in the bridal party. We kept it small, Kelsey told me, smoothing the front of her robe while 3 boutique friends, a distant cousin, and a coworker she had known for 6 months, laughed behind her. I sat at a table near the kitchen doors, close enough to hear plates being stacked. Halfway through the reception, the photographer, Eli Warren, walked past with his shot list and stopped near me. "Are you a friend of the groom?" I looked up at him. "I'm the bride's sister." He glanced down at his list. His face changed for one quick second, not pity exactly, but recognition that something was wrong and he had stepped into it. "Oh," he said. "Sorry, I'll check with Kelsey." He never came back. During the speeches, Noah lifted his glass and thanked Warren and Margot for saving for years to give Kelsey the day she deserved. Everyone clapped. I clapped too, because my hands knew their job even when my heart did not. Kelsey stood beside Noah, glowing under the string lights. Then she looked across the room at me and smiled like a person keeping a secret warm in her mouth. That night, I sat in my car outside my apartment, still wearing the dress I had bought on sale, my feet aching from shoes no one had noticed. I was reaching for my keys when Dad called. "Wedding invoices are killing us," he said. "Your mother is embarrassed to even ask." I closed my eyes. "How much?" $2,600 would get us through Friday. What I wanted to say was, I was not even in the family photos. What I said was, I can send it tonight. I opened the bank app under the dim dome light of my car and transferred the money. Back then, I thought I was helping my family survive one hard month. Later, I would learn I had helped pay for a celebration, where my seat had been placed close to the kitchen because no one had needed me in the pictures. Chapter 3. The Money Map. By the time I finally understood what I had done, the wedding was no longer a memory. It was a line item. That was how I survived the first night after Kelsey sent me the recording. I did not call my parents or Kelsey. I did not defend myself in the family group chat. For once, I let silence do what my explanations never had. I let it protect me. I left the office at 5:30, drove to an office supply store off Gun Barrel Road, and bought file folders, sticky tabs, legal pads, printer ink, and a banker's box. The cashier asked if I was organizing taxes. "Something like that," I said. At my apartment in Chattanooga, I cleared the kitchen table and started building the case the way I would have built it for a client. Bank statements went in one stack. Old emails from mom and dad, text messages, payment memos. The EOB pages Dad had sent me years before, screenshots from the family group chat, wedding messages, photos Kelsey had posted online, the ones I had scrolled past with a strange little ache I never wanted to name. I made coffee at 7. At 9 I made another pot. By midnight, my table looked less like a home and more like a deposition room. I opened the spreadsheet and created new columns: claimed reason, amount sent, document source, verified. Discrepancy, potential use. That last one made me pause. Potential use. It sounded cold, but so had the recording. So had their laughter. So had the way they had trained me to believe love meant paying quietly and never asking for paper. It started with Dad's back procedure in 2018 because I wanted it to be clean. I wanted to prove, maybe even to myself, that not everything was a lie. Dad had really had the procedure. He had really been in pain. Had really sent me a few explanation of benefits pages because he said insurance language made him dizzy. "Willa, you're good with this stuff," he had said back then. "Can you tell me what they're even saying?" I had looked at the pages quickly, tired from a 60-hour work week, and focused only on the parts he circled. I had not asked why some pages were missing. I had not compared dates. I had not added anything. That night I did. Dad had told me the out-of-pocket cost was $31,500. The EOB showed the insurance company had paid most of it. The actual patient responsibility was $6,240. I sat with those two numbers for a long time. $31,500. $6,240. Difference was $25,260. I remembered Dad's voice from 2018. Insurance barely covers anything these days. I remembered canceling a weekend trip with 2 friends from work because I had told myself Dad's back mattered more than a hotel room and a concert ticket. I remembered eating peanut butter toast for dinner that week because I had moved money out of savings and into his account. Now the EOB and the wire confirmation sat side by side under the kitchen light. One was what he said. One was what was true. In the verified column, I typed one word. After that, the house came next. The Laurel Bend Road house had always been sacred territory in my family. If Mom wanted me guilty fast, she mentioned losing the house. If Dad wanted me quiet, he mentioned shame. In 2020, they told me the mortgage was in trouble, and after that, I sent $1,950 a month because Dad said Volunteer State Credit Union was breathing down his neck. I pulled up the county recorder's public search. I typed Warren Sutter. The record loaded so quickly it felt cruel. The mortgage on Laurel Bend Road had been marked satisfied on May 6, 2020. Satisfied, paid, done. I stared at the word until my eyes burned. After that date, I had sent $1,950 a month for 31 more months. $60,450. I remembered Mom whispering into the phone, "If we lose this house, your father won't survive the shame." I'd been eating cold noodles at my desk that day, working late, telling myself I did not need much. They were not about to lose the house. They had been sitting inside a house that was already paid off while I paid for a fear they invented. I typed false again. Mom's specialist treatments were harder, and I made myself slow down. She had claimed she needed $1,850 a month for out-of-network pain injections and specialist visits after a minor accident. I did not call clinics. I did not call pharmacies. I did not pretend being angry gave me the right to private medical information. I only used what she had sent me herself, appointment reminders she forwarded when she wanted money, a statement showing a few smaller charges, an insurance summary accidentally included in an email chain, 2 appointment notices marked canceled. It was enough to make the pattern smell wrong, but not enough to make it clean. So I typed, repairs sub poena and verification. For Kelsey, I did the same. There were dozens of transfers labeled books, fees, help, Kelsey tuition gap. $400 here, $600 there. But I could not remember a graduation. I could not remember a transcript on the fridge. I could not remember Kelsey talking about finals after 2017. What I remembered was the boutique, brunch pictures, weekend trips, and Mom saying, "She's taking lighter classes. Don't make her feel judged." I did not call Cleveland State Community College. I knew better. Student records were not mine to grab because I was angry. I flagged the whole category, tuition claim, Vircoy through council. Then I searched Dad's name again in the county property records, expecting to see only Laurel Bend Road. A second property appeared, Ocoee Lake area. Cabin purchase, August 2022. Purchase price, $214,000. Down payment, $92,000. Buyer, Warren Sutter. For the first time that night, I pushed back from the table. I knew that dock, not because anyone had invited me there. Not because Dad had called and said, "Your mother and I bought something by the lake." Not because Kelsey had ever written, "Come spend the weekend with us." I knew it from her pictures, weekend blessings. That was the caption. Kelsey in sunglasses, one hand around a drink, the lake glowing behind her. A grill in the background, Adirondack chairs, a wooden dock, a corner of a boat she had once called borrowed. I had thought it was a friend's cabin, maybe a rental, maybe one of Noah's coworkers. It belonged to my father. I opened August 2022 in my bank records. There it was, August 12, 2022, wire transfer. $18,500. Memo, second procedure deposit. 3 days later, the escrow record tied to the cabin showed a deposit, August 15, 2022. Depositor, Warren Sutter. Amount, $18,500. Same amount. 3 days apart. On my side, a medical emergency. On his side, a lake cabin. I printed both pages. The printer hummed in the dark kitchen like it knew what it was making. I placed the wire confirmation beside the escrow record and wrote across the top of a legal pad, "Exhibit." The next morning, I called Maeve Rolston. Her office was small and close to the courthouse, the kind of place with old wood chairs, overfilled shelves, and no interest in impressing anyone. Maeve was 64, semi-retired, and known for civil fraud and asset recovery cases that did not look dramatic until she opened the records. She read my folder in silence. Not once did she gasp. Not once did she call my parents monsters. That made me trust her more. After 20 minutes, she looked up and asked, "Do you want punishment, recovery, or distance?" I swallowed. "I want the money back. And I want the lie to stop." Eve nodded as if that was a better answer than revenge. "We may be looking at civil fraud, false pretenses, unjust enrichment, possibly a lien strategy if the lake property is reachable. We'll need subpoenas, preservation letters, clean records. I need you to understand something, Willa. Public exposure feels powerful, but court does not run on feelings." "I know." She tapped the 2 pages I had marked Exhibit A. "The cleanest thing in this folder is not the recording. It's the $18,500. That landed harder than I expected. The recording had woken me up. The paperwork would win. Maeve introduced me to her legal assistant, Lena Ortiz, who began building an exhibit index. Anything I had gathered legally stayed in. Anything that needed verification, like school records or medical claims, would go through proper discovery after a complaint was filed. No shortcuts, no gossip, no stolen access. If my family had built their lies on emotion, I was not going to build the truth the same way. When I got home that evening, the first blue folder sat on my table with a label Lena had printed, Sutter v. Sutter. Preliminary exhibits. My phone buzzed with a bank reminder, scheduled transfer tomorrow. Warren Sutter and Margot Sutter. For years that notification had felt like obligation. That night, it looked like a trap with a calendar alert attached. I opened the bank app, tapped the transfer, and canceled it. The confirmation screen appeared. For the first time in years, no money was moving from me to them. Then my phone rang. Dad, Chapter 4. When I stopped playing, it started. Let it ring long enough to feel the old version of myself reach for the phone first. That version would have answered on the first buzz, apologized before she knew what she had done, and found a way to make the missing transfer sound like an accident instead of a decision. I watched Dad's name light up my screen while the blue folder sat open on my kitchen table. When I finally answered, I did not say I was sorry. Your mother and I didn't see the transfer, Dad said. His tone was careful, not angry yet. He was giving me a chance to step back into the role he had built for me. I didn't forget. The silence on the line stretched so long I could hear my refrigerator hum behind me. What does that mean? It means I canceled it. Dad breathed out through his nose, the way he did when a breaker box did not make sense, or a waitress brought him the wrong order. Your mother has treatment expenses. The house has expenses. I've got tires on the truck that won't make it another month. And Kelsey's been struggling too, whether you care or not. I looked at the folder labeled Sutter v. Sutter Preliminary Exhibits. The wire confirmations for $18,500 sat near the top. Send me the invoice. I'll pay legitimate bills directly. His voice hardened. You're turning family into a business transaction. No, I said. I'm stopping a transaction that was never family. He hung up. Mom called 20 minutes later. I almost did not answer. But part of me wanted to know which mask she would choose first. She chose tears. Your father is shaking, she said. Do you know what you're doing to this family? My throat tightened automatically. That was the humiliating part. Even with Exhibit A on my kitchen table, even after hearing her laugh about my bank account, my body still wanted to fix her sadness. Then I looked at the blue folder. What I'm doing is asking for documentation. Money changed you. No, I said. The recording did. For the first time in my life, my mother had no immediate answer. There was just breath on the line, thin and stunned as if she had reached for a weapon and found it missing. The next morning, I drove to Maeve Rolston's office near the courthouse. Her building was brick, old and plain, with a brass plate by the door that looked polished by habit, not vanity. Lena Ortiz had already arranged the conference table into neat stacks. Draft complaint. Initial exhibit list. Preservation letter. Public records. Items to subpoena once the complaint was filed. Eve watched me read the top page. Once this is filed, they may panic, she said. They may cry, they may smear you. Do not answer emotion with emotion, I know. No, Willa, you know that for clients. I need you to know it for yourself. That landed where it needed to. Signed by noon, Kelsey had started. She posted in the family group chat first. Some people get one good job and suddenly forget who raised them. Then Facebook. Money shows people's real hearts. By 3, Mom had apparently told her Bible study that I was cutting off my parents during medical hardship. Jean Porter, one of Mom's church friends, sent me a message about how good people should keep family disagreements private. My Aunt Diane called while I was still at my desk. Your mother says you're cutting them off during treatment, she said. Willa, that's not like you. It is like me to ask for invoices. She's your mother. Then it should be easy for her to tell the truth. Diane sighed, disappointed in that family way that used to make me fold. All I'm asking, I said, is that you ask her for the invoices. She ended the call soon after. That evening, instead of going straight home, I drove through Cleveland and turned onto Laurel Bend Road. I did not know why I needed to see the house. Maybe because for years, that house had been the emergency. The fragile thing. The thing one missed payment might destroy. The kitchen lights were on. Through the window I could see the pale shine of the quartz countertops. Elsie's car was in the driveway. The house looked warm, settled, paid for. Nothing about it looked 1 month away from disaster. I slowed down, then kept driving. I did not pull in. I did not knock. I did not offer myself up to whatever performance they had prepared inside. The next day, Reverend Alan Pike called me. I had known him since high school. He had baptized Kelsey, prayed over Mom's migraines, and once told Dad that a man who fixed things with his hands understood service better than most. His voice was gentle when he spoke. Your parents are hurt, Willa. I understand. But hurt feelings don't verify expenses. There was a pause. If you're asking me to forgive, I hear you, I said. But if you're asking me to keep funding things no one will document, I can't do that anymore. He did not defend me, not yet. But he did not scold me either. I'll pray for wisdom, he said. So will I. 2 days later, Kelsey walked into the lobby at Hensley and Rowe and told the receptionist there was a family emergency. Renata saw my face when I came out of the hallway and followed at a distance. Kelsey stood near the glass doors in a cream sweater, hair curled, phone in her hand like she had already decided which parts of the conversation might be useful later. "You're embarrassing Mom at church," she said. "She's doing that herself." Kelsey's eyes sharpened. "You always wanted to make me look spoiled. I didn't have to make you anything." She stepped closer and lowered her voice. "You're not the victim because you chose to send money. That one hit." She knew it would. For a second I saw the wedding again. The kitchen table, the candle. The way Mom had said Kelsey had a soft heart and I was stronger. Then I saw the escrow deposit. "Kelsey," I said, "ask Dad what happened on August 15th, 2022. Her expression flickered. I added, "And ask him why I know about the lake." The confidence drained out of her face before she could stop it. "You don't know what you think you know. Tell them to enjoy the anniversary." She left without another word. Renata came to stand beside me after the doors closed. "Is that the family blind spot?" I looked at the street beyond the glass. "Not anymore." That night Noah called me. He sounded confused, not angry, which somehow made me sadder. "Kelsey says you're trying to destroy your parents." "I'm trying to stop a lie. Is this about money you gave them?" I did not give him the whole file. "Not yet." "No, did you know who paid the final vendor balance for your wedding?" He was quiet. "Warren told me he and Margot saved for years. You should ask Kelsey the same question." The family group chat lit up the next morning with the invitation. 40 years of faith, family and love, Saturday at the lake. No one invited me separately. My name was just one more contact in the thread. Kelsey texted privately. "Try not to bring your calculator." I took a screenshot. Mom sent one message later. "Please don't embarrass your father." I did not answer. Instead, I opened Kelsey's old photos again. The dock, the grill, the string lights, the Adirondack chairs, the corner of the pontoon boat Dad had once called borrowed. I understood then that the cabin was not just a piece of property. It was a stage built with money I had sent in silence. The day before the party, Maeve called. "The complaint is filed." Lena had prepared 5 blue folders. One for me, one for Maeve, one service copy, one exhibit copy, one sealed backup. Maeve's voice stayed steady. "You don't need to convince everyone. You only need to tell the truth once. And remember, the party does not replace court." "I know. It only stops them from using the room as a shield." On Saturday morning, I drove toward Ocoee Lake with the folder on the passenger seat. The water flashed through the trees, bright and clean. It had never been used to hide anything. Then the cabin appeared behind the pines. I saw the dock from Kelsey's photos. The grill, the Adirondack chairs. The pontoon boat Dad had pretended belonged to someone else. I stepped out of the car with the blue folder in my hand. From the backyard, Dad's voice rose over the guests. "Everything you see here was built by love and hard work." I stood at the edge of the lawn, looking at the cabin, and knew that would be the last sentence he got to say before the truth began. Chapter 5. Exhibit. The backyard was full of people who thought they were standing inside a blessing. String lights hung from the porch beams. A buffet table stretched beside the deck. Framed photos of my parents from 40 years of marriage sat near a white banner that read, 40 years of faith and family. Behind it all was the lake, bright and calm, reflecting sunlight like nothing ugly had ever happened there. There were church friends, neighbors, cousins I had not seen in years, Reverend Alan Pike, Aunt Diane, Jean Porter from Mom's Bible study, Noah Whitcomb, and Noah's mother Tessa. Kelsey stood close to Mom, her arms folded, trying to look bored instead of nervous. Dad stood near the center of the yard in a pale blue shirt, holding a plastic cup like he was about to bless the entire property with his own good name. "We never had much," he said, smiling at the crowd, "but we built this life with faith, work, and family." Mom dabbed at the corner of her eye. People made soft sounds of approval. Jean Porter pressed a hand to her chest. Aunt Diane looked at me as if begging me to behave. Kelsey's eyes found mine, and there was that familiar challenge in them. "Go ahead. Make yourself look crazy." Then Dad saw me standing with the blue folder. His smile widened. "Willa, since you're here, maybe you'd like to say something about family support." He thought he had cornered me. He thought if he said it in front of enough people, I would fall back into the old shape. The quiet daughter. The useful daughter. Daughter who paid and swallowed and smiled. I stepped forward. "I can talk about family support," I said. "I kept records." The yard changed temperature. Mom's hand dropped from her face. "Not now, Willa." I placed the blue folder on the table beside their anniversary cake. "You had 13 years of my silence. I need 5 minutes." Nobody laughed then. I took out my phone. Before anyone decides I'm exaggerating, I want you to hear what started this. I pressed play. Dad's voice came through the small speaker first, casual and amused. She's too responsible. Then Mom, what we need is her bank account. Then Kelsey in the background, asking what story they should use next month. Another medical thing, maybe. Their laughter moved across the yard, bounced off the deck rail, and died somewhere over the lake. For a few seconds, nobody breathed loudly enough to be heard. Mom lunged forward. Turn that off. I stopped the audio. Aunt Diane looked at Mom for a long moment. Not at me, at her. I opened the folder. Maeve had already warned me not to hand original documents around like party favors. What I had in front of me were copies and exhibit summaries. The originals were safe, indexed, and already in her office. From 2012 to 2025, I transferred $326,780 to my parents under the label family support. The number sat there between the buffet and the lake. Dad's jaw tightened. You're making this sound like something it wasn't. I lifted the first page. In 2018, Dad told me his back procedure cost $31,500 out of pocket. The EOB he once sent me shows the actual patient responsibility was $6,240. You don't understand medical billing, Dad snapped. I looked at him. I do for a living. That was the first time I saw fear cross his face. I turned to the next document. The Laurel Bend Road mortgage was satisfied on May 6, 2020. It continued, sending $1,950 a month for 31 months after that because Dad said the house was at risk. Aunt Diane frowned and leaned closer to the page. Jean Porter stared at Dad. Reverend Allen's expression went still. Mom whispered, "This is not the place," I said. "This is the place you bought with the money." Kelsey made a sharp little sound. I turned another page. For years, I sent money labeled books, fees, classes, and tuition gap for Kelsey. The records I have show those payments continued. Long after Kelsey stopped talking about school, stopped mentioning exams, and stopped showing any sign that the money was going to Cleveland State. Maeve has already flagged those claims for subpoena. Kelsey stepped forward. That's private. Maeve Rolston stood for the first time. Her voice was calm, level, and impossible to bully. What Willa is showing today is her own payment record and a list of claims prepared for court. Student records will be handled through lawful process, not gossip. Noah turned slowly toward Kelsey. You told me she never helped you. Kelsey did not answer him. She looked at Mom, then Dad, like one of them might still have a line ready for her to use. I picked up the last 2 pages. My hands did not shake. On August 12, 2022, I wired Dad $18,500 for what he called a second procedure deposit. On August 15, 2022, that same amount went into escrow for this cabin. I let the silence do the rest. People looked around then. At the deck, at the dock, at the grill, at the boat. At the lake behind my father's shoulder, I said. That is Exhibit A. Tessa Whitcomb looked at Kelsey with a coldness I had never seen from her. Noah's voice was low. Kelsey, did you know? Kelsey swallowed. It wasn't like that. Noah's face changed. You told me your parents saved for our wedding. Did your sister pay for it? Kelsey's eyes filled with tears, but tears were no longer an answer. Dad moved toward the folder. Maeve stepped in front of the table. Mr. Sutter, a civil complaint has already been filed in Bradley County Circuit Court. This is not gossip. This is an exhibit index. Dad stopped. Reverend Allen looked at him and asked quietly, Warren, is that your voice on the recording? Dad said nothing. Mom began crying then. The old performance. The one that had worked on me for most of my life. She's destroying this family. Aunt Diane finally spoke. If Willa was lying, why did you scream to turn off your own voice? That was when the party ended, even though people stayed standing for another minute. Nobody announced it. Nobody needed to. Jean Porter stepped away from Mom. Tessa pulled Noah toward the side yard. Kelsey cried harder, but I could not tell whether she was sorry or only exposed. Dad stood by the buffet table, pale and silent. Mom looked around for an audience and found witnesses instead. I closed the folder. I'm not asking anyone to pick a side, I said. I'm telling you why I stopped paying. Then I looked at my parents and my sister. It was not family when the photos were taken. I was family when the bill was due. Maeve walked out with me. On the way to the car, I looked at the dock one last time. I did not see it as something stolen from me anymore. I saw it as an asset with a lien waiting for it. 6 weeks later, Maeve called to tell me my parents wanted mediation. They did not suddenly become honest, they became afraid. The recording was too damaging. The $18,500 was too clean. Discovery would open everything they had tried to keep, soft and emotional, wedding payments, credit card balances, the boat purchase, Kelsey's school claims, and every account that touched the lake cabin. They were afraid of a criminal referral. They were afraid of what the church people would say when the rest of the records became public. The settlement was $235,000 over 5 years, secured by a lien on the Ocoee Lake cabin. If they missed 2 consecutive payments, the cabin could be forced into sale. Dad sold the pontoon boat for $28,750 to make the first payment. I did not recover every dollar. The documented fraud was higher, $287,640, but Maeve explained the math clearly. A guaranteed recovery with a lien was stronger than years of fees, delay, and the risk of them trying to bury assets or claim hardship. This is not forgiveness, Maeve said. It's recovery with teeth. Dad stopped speaking at church events. Mom's Bible study stopped treating her tears like evidence. Jean Porter kept her distance. Aunt Diane sent me one message. I should have asked more questions. I wrote back, me too. Noah moved in temporarily with his mother, Tessa, and asked Kelsey for a full financial disclosure. I do not know if their marriage survived. I only know he never looked at her the same way after that afternoon. I changed my phone number. My parents could contact me through Maeve, and only through Maeve. Hannah Pell, an old college friend, found me through LinkedIn, not my new number. She worked with a nonprofit that helped people trapped in financial abuse, and for the first time I wondered if the thing my family used against me could become the thing I used to help someone else. The first paycheck after the settlement arrived on a Friday morning. No scheduled transfer waited underneath it. I opened my bank app and went to saved recipients. Warren Sutter, Margot Sutter. I deleted both names. I did not cry. I just breathed. For the first time in years, my money stayed where I put it. The silence in my account did not feel selfish anymore. It felt like freedom. If your family used you as the bank account, would you expose the recording in front of everyone, or let the paperwork speak for you?